What's your favorite idea, chat? Mine is being creative. Basically, the plan here is to write a short story, then perform it. How are we gonna do that? We're gonna use something called, actually I don't know if it has a name. I call it Alan Moore's hierarchy of the story. This is something I find really helps if you're trying to get your creative juices. So, Alan Moore basically posits that there are 4 qualities to a good story, and he ranks those qualities by how important they are. And they are point, characters, setting, and plot. I guess I should put numbers. And so basically, what he's saying is that if your story is really, really good at number 1, they won't care about the other ones. If point 2 is really, really good, you don't have to worry about 3 and 4. It's basically a way of organizing what you want to do with your story and how. And it starts with the point of your story, which a lot of people get confused with the plot. A lot of people think like the point of the story is to tell the story. But usually stories are a vehicle for something else, either an idea or an emotion. What the story is about. So for example, I assume most of you have heard of Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies is often taught in high schools because it has a very, very obvious point. And that point is that humanity, by its nature, is kind of evil. Left to our own devices, we will turn on each other, we will be evil and cruel. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what the story is about. That's why they wrote the story. And everything in the story is there to facilitate that point. Now, oftentimes when you talk about this, people get the idea that like, oh, a point has to be pretentious or it has to tell you like a message. But no, no, no. The point of Sherlock Holmes is that the audience gets to experience an exciting mystery. Solving the mystery with Sherlock is the point. The point of Doom, the video game, is a power fantasy about mowing down demons. Your point doesn't have to be anything pretentious. It doesn't have to be super detailed. It can just be as simple as, I want a really good love story. But it's important to go in with that point in mind, knowing what you're trying to achieve, because that will influence everything else. So this is the same as the theme of a story. In the case of like the Fast and the Furious movies, I'm not sure I would call their point like a theme. I think the theme is like family, but it doesn't get that theme across very well. Mostly what the Fast and the Furious movies are about are big spectacle action set pieces. They exist as a vehicle to show vehicles doing crazy stunts. So we've got the point, what the story is about. And the thing I was trying to make about the hierarchy, right, is that I guess the Fast and the Furious movies are an excellent example. Do they have really good characters? Is the setting well known? Does the plot make sense? No. But those things don't matter because the point of the story is to have big action set pieces. That's what they set out to do, that's what the audience expects from it, and that's what they get. You should still try to do those things, and honestly, a really good like work of art, something that stands the test of time, will have all of these things in spades. You should always try to do all these things, but oftentimes art is made for money, art is made on a budget, on a time constraint, and when you're doing that, you need to keep in mind this stuff. Characters are the reason you care about the story. I feel like it's possible to have a really good story that has a really solid point without any characters. Like an allegory, where like the characters are just cutouts, or it's just like, oh, a man walks down the road and he comes to a fork in the road. Like you could tell a story that has a point with no characters and still have it be compelling. It's a little bit more difficult to have characters just ambling about and have those characters carry the story on their own if there's no point to them being there. Unless, of course, the point, like if you're making a biography or something, then the point is the characters. The point is to show off a cool character and what they've done. Who the story is about. Setting. Obviously, where the story takes place. The world. And then the plot is what literally happens. And it's one of those things like, you can make a story where the point is the setting or the point is the plot. Arguably, that's what like a mystery story is. you're unraveling the plot, and the point of the story is to unravel it. But for the most part, this is how we're working with. So now that you kind of understand all of these things, let's start with our own story. We're writing from scratch. We're trying to make up something just off the top of our heads. What point do we want to get across? Give me some suggestions. What are some things you think would be interesting to write about? It can be anything. It can be like an idea. It can be just like a feeling or an emotion. Somehow I'm the worst target for the stream. I basically don't read any books. You don't have to read books. You just have to understand media. Could be video games, could be movies. Even songs often have a point to them. Disappointment. Not the most compelling point. I'm not sure if we want to write a story about disappointment. I mean, I feel like that would be really easy, right? All we have to do is build up a really big premise and then have it fall flat. So you said a party of heroes taking down a genocidal god. That's like a plot point. That's what they do. My question is, why do we want to see them do that? Is it because the heroes are really cool and interesting? Is it because you want to see a fight where somehow something super powerful loses? Is it about, like, humanity being able to topple God? Is it an anti-genocide thing? Is the important part that, like, this god is doing genocide and you want to have a firm stance that it's bad, so you write a story where something representing genocide gets punched in the face? Revenge. Coming of age, yeah, I mean, that's something. Found family. Rags to riches. So these are all a little vague, a little stereotypical, but we can work with these. I like for each one of these, let's add one more detail about it. These are all general ideas, but what are we trying to say about them? Like, disappointment is a vibe. We could definitely make a story where someone is disappointed. But what do we want to say about disappointment? Is disappointment inevitable? Are we disappointing the audience because we want to prepare them for the real world that is often disappointing? Is it that disappointment is actually a good thing? Because being disappointed by something can spur you to do better next time. Disappointment makes you grow. Now there's a point. There's something you could write a story about. Okay, so revenge. This one I feel like is a little easier because generally stories about revenge come down to like two ideas. Revenge is good, actually. It's nice and satisfying to get revenge. Or revenge is hollow. It doesn't satisfy you in the way you thought it would. Now, if you want to be creative, or I guess not creative, but original, I guess would be the word. If you want to be original, take the first idea that comes to your mind. Don't do that. Think of the opposite. Don't do that either. Then try to find some third thing that doesn't fit into either category. So if we wanted to write a stereotypical story about revenge, it would either be like a revenge fantasy where the point is the audience gets the catharsis of like getting revenge, or it's a cautionary tale like, oh, if you try to get revenge, you'll only end up disappointed. But if we wanted to do something original, we could take some kind of third path of revenge. Maybe that's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I like the Lazarus idea. The idea that, like, yes, the revenge itself is satisfying, but what happens after that? If you've devoted your life to revenge and you achieve it, what do you do with the rest of your life? Coming of age. This, you could do a million, billion stories. This one you really gotta get, like, kind of specific, because there's so many lessons you can learn about growing up. Yeah, I don't really have any idea. I never really liked coming of age stories. I put this in there because it seemed like something that chat might enjoy, but I'm not sure, like, what kind of I'm like, oftentimes when you're trying to be creative, you think of your own life, and it's like, what was my coming of age story? There wasn't one. I'm still like a man-child. Discovering homosexuality. That's certainly compelling, but I'm not sure if I have the experience or the nuance to write a short story about that. You know what, I think this is beyond the scope of a short story. Part of being able to plan and, like, improv is knowing when an idea doesn't work and just getting rid of it. Found family, probably one of the, like, easiest stories to write, I feel like. The problem is every found family story is almost exactly the same, right? It's just like, oh, the people who raised me suck, but I found people who accept me and love me like a family, even though they're not blood related. I don't know if you can subvert or twist that expectation, like maybe do a story about someone in a cult who's trying to find a family, and then it turns out that the cult is just as abusive as their parents were. Like, that's a really dark story. I'm not sure if that's really what we want to talk about. Or we could take this non-literally. What if you were walking through the woods and you found a family? What about a found family where the blood family is equally good but in different ways? Maybe balancing found with real family? Okay, and then rags to riches. What can we possibly say about... I mean, so far everything we have is trying to have like a message or like themes. Point doesn't necessarily have to be anything complex. It doesn't have to be like tell the audience a lesson. It could just be like, wouldn't it be sweet to go from rags to riches? A pleasant fantasy. If we wrote that one, it would just be that. Okay, so now chat, here's the thing. We have to pick one of these. We going with disappointment makes you grow? Are we doing revenge? Found family needs to be balanced? Or are we just writing a wholesome rags to riches story? I'll give y'all 3 minutes. Is it better to have a story with multiple points or one strong point? It depends on what kind of medium you're working with. I feel like when it comes to like a short story, if we're limiting ourselves to like 1,000 words or less, we really need to stick with like one solid point, because there's not going to be time or room to do multiple ones. If you're doing a TV series where you have a bunch of different characters you're juggling and they all have arcs, you can have multiple points inserted into an overarching theme. Okay, looks like revenge has won. I want to keep these here in case we want to come back to them. Remember how far we've gone, but this is the one we're going for. Revenge can be satisfying, but what comes next? Okay, so we've got our basic idea. So the question is, what kind of character do we want to do to get that? Wouldn't it be best to know our setting first? No. Characters are more important. If you can make a character that people can connect with, you can put them in any setting. Doesn't matter how fantastical it is, as long as the character is someone we can connect with. So, like my first idea, old man. They're at the end of their life, they got revenge, but they have no family, no real friends. They spent their entire life on revenge. So that's one idea. This is sad already, yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be sad. So let's try to get at least 3 potential characters. Who's someone else that we could have experienced this revenge disappointment journey, where perhaps we could learn a different lesson from it, take something away from it. It doesn't necessarily have to be bad. If they're younger, maybe there's still time to change. Maybe it's not that they wasted their entire life, maybe it's that they wasted some aspect of something. Maybe getting revenge caused them to get hurt in a way that will be a reminder to them forever. Here's an idea. Chauffeur. Works for years to get close to mafia boss who killed their family. Finally works their way up to drive for them and takes chance at revenge by driving off bridge. Mafia boss gets killed, but the driver is left paralyzed. Basically, a way to think about this, right, is that on the first one, someone has sacrificed all their time to get revenge. They spent their youth planning the revenge, and as a result, they don't have any connections. They're left as an old man with no friends and no family because they never pursued relationships, they pursued revenge. In the case of the chauffeur, you have someone who gave up their body to get revenge. It didn't take a whole lot of time. They're still a young person, but in order to get their revenge, they had to become paralyzed. And so they're left with the satisfaction of getting their revenge, but now they have to learn to live as a quadriplegic. So putting it that way, what's one other thing you could have to give up in order to get your revenge? How can we outcast? Yeah, have someone lose their ties to society. I'm gonna call them, for lack of a better term, the immigrant. So the immigrant is someone who travels to another country to get revenge. They learn the local customs, the local language, they make friends, all to get closer to the target. They kill the target, but are exposed and have to leave. They go back home, which no longer feels like home. Maybe someone who trades their memories of the person they lost to get revenge for that person. Sci-fi. Character gives up their memories of someone who was murdered in order to get revenge on the murderer. That's a really good idea. It almost feels like a different point. I could see doing something like this, especially in a short story. Yeah, maybe it could be magical instead of sci-fi, but it's like, oh yeah, you could get revenge on the guy who killed your wife, but you'll forget your wife. But then the point would be something like, the memories you made while they were alive are more important than how they died. Because they would get their revenge, but it would feel hollow because they no longer have a memory of who they're getting revenge for. Yeah, again, I was like, I don't really want to go off the point that we set up. But I think I like this one enough that, like, if you really want to take it in another direction, I feel like that has enough substance to it that we could really make something compelling with that. So let's do another poll. What direction do you want to go? Who are we attaching this to? We're going to change this not from sci-fi, but I'm just going to call it Faust. This is a Faustian-style bargain. Okay, looks like the Faust one is winning. Everyone else has one vote. Okay, so we're doing, like, changed. Good memories are more important than a satisfying resolution. That's essentially what we're doing with this revenge story, what it's been changed to with the Faustian idea. But that's how writing happens sometimes. So the setting, at this point, I feel like we're fairly locked in. I'm already kind of getting this vibe where, like, because we're writing a short story, because we're trying to keep it about 1,000 characters, or not 1,000 words or less, we don't want to have to come up with, like, this whole weird sci-fi explanation for, like, a device where the justice system can kill your murderer, but it will erase their memories. Although, fuck. Okay, I just thought of a cool idea. So it's like, there's a machine. We can plug the murderer in, where you can feed them all your memories, so that they have pure total empathy of knowing exactly who they snuffed out, and the impact that their murder had. So that they will feel true anguish and loss and regret for what they've done. But doing so will erase those memories from you. So instead of copy-paste, it's cut-paste, yeah. In this one, it would be very explicitly where, like, yeah, your friends and your family would still remember that person, but you would not. And then the other one is mystical, literally Faustian. A mysterious man appears and offers you the chance to get revenge on the person who killed your significant other. However, doing so erases all memories of that other from your mind. Okay, I think those are the two ideas we're going for. So let's do this poll. Do you want to go with the sci-fi one, or do you want to go with the mystical one? Yeah, and then while they're doing that, actually, plot, what literally happens. Simple. At this point, Act 1, explain the bargain. Act 2, see the revenge. Act 3, feel disappointed. Easy. Unfortunately, the poll tied. I think at the end of the day, I have more ideas for the mystical one. So now, let's actually begin the writing process. Forgotten Revenge by Hardleg Joe. And chat. We can always come up with a better name later. You gotta throw that in, you know. Our main theme may not be that the rich get away with crimes, but if we could throw a little bit of that in, might as well. An important part in any kind of short story, any story in general, is sort of like this economy of words, right? We need to convey in like a single paragraph that not only was Jacob murdered, but he was murdered in like a really foul way where the senator like absolutely deserves some kind of revenge. A bit of a downer ending. I mean, we always knew it was going to be. But we're at 951 words. We wanted to write 1,000. Maybe we could write another paragraph or two? Did we ever think of like a better name for this, chat? A picture of Jacob. Oh wow, I just know that it's a sign, chat. If we make the title A Picture of Jacob, it is exactly 1,000 words. But let's go ahead. I wanted to end this off by giving like a little performance. Give a little example of my like Legend of Lefty skills. And just do like an audiobook reading. I was walking down the street when I spotted the smug face of Senator Smith. He was on a TV in the window of an electronics store, speaking live to a crowd of hundreds as part of his re-election campaign. My fists instinctively tightened, my mouth curving into a deep scowl. He killed Jacob. I know he did. But as always, the rich are never held accountable in this fucking country. He didn't deserve to be up there, smiling and waving in his $100 suit, while Jacob lay cold in the ground. He was so young, so full of potential. He didn't deserve the awful things they did to him. His face so mangled they had to have a closed casket funeral. I was staring so intently at the TV that I didn't notice the hooded figure until he was standing right next to me.
You want him dead, don't you? I can see it in your eyes.
The stranger had a voice like an endless cavern. His lips barely moved as he spoke, and yet his voice was deep and resonant, as if he was simply being used as a speaker box by some much larger entity far, far away. I turned to look at the stranger. They were pale as the moon, their eyes concealed under a hood. It was a dry summer evening, but their breath was as foggy as though it was the dead of winter.
I can end this human's life,
the stranger said.
I can make him suffer.
It should have been frightening. The stranger's voice was like a serpent winding through my bones, and they spoke openly of murdering a politician. And yet, my anger for the senator was so great that I was willing to tolerate anything that offered the slightest chance of revenge, no matter how impossible or ominous. Do it, I said in a cool but firm voice. The stranger grinned wide, showing a mouth of crooked teeth.
You don't even know my price,
it said, practically salivating over that final word. I probably should have hesitated. Whatever this creature wanted, it couldn't be good. But instead I looked straight into the dark void where its eyes should have been. Tell me, I said, almost growing impatient.
Simple,
the stranger said.
Your memories of Jacob.
You want my memories? How? Why?
Does it matter? You want your revenge, don't you? Shake my hand, and it will be done.
The stranger reached forward, offering a pale hand. It looked so normal. This was crazy. There was no reason to believe this stranger and their words. And yet, as I reached forward and shook their hand, I wanted more than anything for it to be true. I'd have given up almost anything to see that bastard face justice for what he'd done. The stranger grinned and licked their lips. I was about to ask when the revenge would happen, when suddenly there were screams and gasps around me. I looked back at the TV just in time to see the senator's face torn apart by shrapnel. A man was rushing the stage with some kind of homemade shotgun. There was a crack as he fired again, and the senator's chest erupted into 1,000 splotches of red as he fell over, screaming in agony. Security seemed too stunned to act as the assassin ran up and began beating the senator with his improvised weapon. The TV cameras picked up several sickening wet cracks as metal met bone and crushed it violently. The gunman was shouting incoherently as the senator's voice turned into a garbled wet mess of blood and then went silent. Only then did the much more subdued sounds of traditional pistols ring out, shooting the assassin where he stood. I stared at shock at what I had just witnessed on live TV. By now a crowd was beginning to form around the electronics store window, all of them murmuring and chattering. I turned to look at the stranger, but they were gone. For a brief moment, I smiled wide. My heart soared despite the carnage. Somehow, through some act of God or Satan, that bastard had finally gotten what he deserved. I tried to imagine Jacob at peace, looking down with satisfaction now that his murder had finally been avenged. But I couldn't. I couldn't imagine Jacob's face at all. I couldn't even remember their name. I walked home in a daze, my mind swirling with mixed emotions. It wasn't until I walked in the door and put up my coat that I saw a picture on the wall. It showed a young man in his 20s, with brown curly hair and bright green eyes. He was smiling at the camera as he stood in my backyard, a drink in his hand and a barbecue grill in the background. The frame had the word Jacob written underneath it. It's the only reason I know that name at all. But who were they? My friend? My partner? A family member? I no longer knew. Clearly someone I had cared about a great deal. I remembered that they were a treasure, someone whose untimely death was the truest form of tragedy, but I could no longer elaborate on why. The satisfaction of getting revenge still stuck with me. I had no mercy or pity for Senator Smith. I knew in my heart that he deserved everything they got. And yet that's all I have. I know the ending of Jacob's story. He was murdered, and that murder was avenged. The evil man who killed him suffered and died just as he did. It was a pleasant thought to know that some kind of cosmic justice existed. But was that feeling worth more than all the good times I had shared with Jacob? Was it worth losing the rest of his story in exchange for a satisfying ending? I don't know. I'll never know. Yeah, I mean, it's not the best story. If you were going to, put this into some kind of short story compilation, you probably want to edit it a little bit more. Who knows if it's even good enough for prime time. But, an important part of learning to be a writer is practice. Practice, practice, practice. It never hurts. Even writing something as simple as this under these conditions, it helps you to learn how to write a little bit better. And now that I've written something and performed it and gotten it out here, y'all can give some feedback. You can let me know, down in the comments what you thought about this, if you like this whole idea, if you'd like to see more short story streams. Maybe we can make more stuff, do some horror stories, something a little less depressing, perhaps. Who knows? We could try to write action scenes. There's a whole lot of potential. And of course, if you give me feedback specifically on the kind of writing I did or the sentence structure or whatever, in the future I can learn from that and try to improve with the next one. Otherwise, I think we're going to call it for here. Thank you to everyone in chat who came down for this interesting experience. Without your feedback, this wouldn't have been possible. So thank you for giving me all your ideas. Take a bow, take a bow. And until next time, good luck and have fun. And keep writing, I guess.